Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our final lecture for this course. In part 1 of this lecture, which has already been posted on YouTube, I did a conceptual overview of everything that we've covered so far this semester, and tried to sort of tie everything together for you guys, and hopefully help you guys understand what the purpose and the underlying concepts of everything that we've covered in this course so far were. This is going to be part 2, and in this video we'll be focusing on going over all the different types of problems and questions that you should be able to complete or resolve if you want to be fully prepared for the final exam that will be taking place next week. Okay, with that said, let's jump right into this. If you have not yet watched part 1 of this lecture, I suggest that you do that first, because I will not be jumping into great detail about the concepts involved in these problems in this video. Okay, so I'm going to organize this similarly as in part 1 of this lecture, and I will be addressing each of the 3 different sections of this course, one after the other. So part 1 of this course was about functions and models. Okay, what should you be able to do from this section? Alright, so first off, the first thing that we covered was linear functions. These are pretty straightforward, but you should be able to find the equation of a line. Given 2 points, given a point and a slope, or given a graph or table. Okay. The other things that you should be able to do relating to linear functions is you should be able to identify if a function is linear based on a graph, table, or formula. And last but not least, you should be able to identify the slope and intercept. All right. After linear functions, next up was their applications to economics. And specifically, we had revenue, cost, and profit. And very simply, what I want you to be able to do here is, given information, about a business model, you should be able to find equations for the revenue, cost, and profit functions. And you should be able to find the break-even point. Okay, that's basically what you should be able to do from revenue, cost, and profit. All of these would be themselves linear functions, so there's not that much more to say about these. Okay, moving on. The next thing that you should be able to do, or that we went over rather, relates to exponential functions. And what I'd like you guys to be able to do as far as exponential functions are concerned are, once again, to be able to identify an exponential function from a formula or a table. You should be able to find the formula for an exponential function. If I give you information about the initial population and about the rate or ratio, you should be able to know the difference and switch between rates, which are given in percentage, and factors, which are the number you multiply by. At each step. Okay, a couple more things that you should be able to do for exponential functions, however, are that you should be able to identify growth versus decay. You should be able to find the half-life or doubling time. And in general, I'd say be able to solve word problems relating to exponential models. Okay, that's about it for the exponential functions. I know I'm going through this relatively quickly, but this really is sort of more of a list video. There's a lot of topics to go into, and if I were to describe how to do each one of these, this video would be very, very, very long, because this is exactly what we've been doing the entire semester. Okay, next up was a section on logarithms. And there's a couple things that I'd like you to be able to do from logarithms. First things first, I would like you guys to know the differences between logs and different bases. Very straightforward. I would like you guys to know the laws of logs. These are the things such as the log of a product is the sum of the logs, the log of a quotient is the difference of the logs, the log of a power, you can take the exponent and put it down in front. All of those things you guys need to know and be able to use. And these all come to a head in being able to solve equations where the variable is in an exponent or in a log. So this is sort of the most important thing. If you want to be able to do this third one, you'll need to know how to do the previous two. And if you're capable of solving equations where the variable is in an exponent or in some power somewhere, and equations where the variable is in a log, then you probably have gotten or mastered to a reasonable extent the laws and properties of logarithms and all of that stuff that you need to know for this section. Okay, that's pretty much it for logarithms. Let's move on to the next part, or the next thing from this section, rather. And that would have been power functions and polynomials. Now, there's really not much to know about power functions and polynomials, but there are, I guess, a couple things. You should be able to identify the graph and formula of a quadratic function Specifically, quadratic functions will have a parabola as a graph, and their formula will have, well, they're polynomials that go up to power x squared. You should know how to solve quadratic equations. And specifically, you should know quadratic formula. That's pretty much all there is for power functions and polynomials. They show up quite a lot, quite a bit more in the later sections when we're doing derivatives and integrals. But as far as studying them for their own sake in the first part of this course, we didn't do all that much. Okay. Last but not least, function composition. There's not all that much to say about this section. This section is important, but very straightforward. You should know how to compose two functions with each other. In both ways. Remember, there are two ways to compose any two functions. And you should also know how to identify the inside and outside functions from a composition. In other words, if I give you guys a function which is itself the result of a composition, you should be able to identify which one was the inside and which one was the outside function that gave you this result. Okay, that's basically everything that there was in part 1 that sort of sticks out to me as being something that you guys should be able to do. Obviously, there's a lot of different problems involved with this, but hopefully, in retrospect, some of this material seems perhaps a bit simpler than the material that we covered since then. Everything in part 1 was basically not calculus. It's basically pre-calc material. And the last thing I guess I should mention about this material is that you should look at exam 1, which is posted on Blackboard. And you should be able to do anything on there. So exam 1 I think was pretty straightforward. Almost everybody did at least decently well on it. And that material is, in my opinion, relatively simple compared to the material we have done ever since then. But if you have any doubts, go back over that exam. Make sure that you can still do all the problems on that, and you should be, I think, good to go. Okay, with this said, let's move on to part 2. Which was derivatives. And in short, TLDR here, everything on the exam you just took. So everything from the exam you just took, you should be able to do. So this includes tangent lines, and approximating with them, this includes all derivative rules, and combinations thereof. This includes optimization, so all the optimization word problems, you should be comfortable with those. And finding increasing, finding decreasing, finding maxes and mins, finding concave up and concave down, finding inflection points, finding crit points. All of this stuff is stuff that you should be able to do. Again, I do a much more thorough conceptual overview of everything that we covered in part 2, or in this section, I should say, on derivatives in the first video that I put out for this lecture. But that's all the conceptual stuff. If it comes to the actual problems that you should be able to solve, basically just look at the exam that you guys just took that was basically entirely derivatives. It was, in my opinion, a pretty difficult exam, made somewhat easier by the fact that it was a take-home, but the problems there were pretty, were not the easiest. And if you're capable of doing everything on exam number 2, the one that you just took, then you should be good for derivatives on the final exam. Okay. And with that said, let's go on to part 3, integrals. And like I mentioned in the first video for today, there hasn't been very much that we went over as far as integrals in our class, but there are still a couple things that you guys should be able to do. The first is that you should be able to find indefinite integrals, or antiderivatives, using power rule, exponential rule, log rule, etc. So you should be able to do all of those. Of course, these are those rules for integrals. Please don't get these confused with the power rule, exponential rule, log rule for derivatives. These rules are exactly the opposite of all of those. So the power rule for integrals does the opposite process of the power rule for derivatives, etc., etc., etc. So try to keep those straight in your head. I know it can be very confusing to have to pass between the two different types of rules, but make sure that you keep them straight. When you're doing integrals, you use the integral rules. When you're doing derivatives, you use the derivative rules. It's very easy to make mistakes on those, so please keep that in mind when you're working through these problems on the final. Next up, you should be able to find the area under a curve using definite integrals. You should be able to find the area between two curves using definite integrals. And you should be able to find indefinite integrals using substitution. Integration by substitution was the last topic, the last technical topic that I covered in this class. It was the last of our theoretical lectures that I posted online for this. And that's basically the last thing that is I'm going to be considering to be fair game for the final exam next week. Relating to this, I want to make one comment. I already sent out an announcement that mentioned this, but for this technique of substitution here, I would like to mention that, as you may be aware, I have not posted, or I never gave you guys a homework set that covered these integrals using substitution, which, as I've mentioned several times, is, in my opinion, the hardest thing that we cover in this course as far as integrals are concerned. It is basically the only advanced technique that we cover in this class for integration at all. And I'm not very happy about the fact that I wasn't able to give you guys a homework set about this. Of course, there was the exam instead, so the exam was far more important than this. but I don't think it's particularly fair to put this on an exam without giving you guys any sort of practice problems to give you guys an idea or to give you guys a way to try your hand at these problems a little bit first before the final. So the solution that I am coming up with for this, and this is regarding integration by substitution. I've decided that I will be posting an optional, and I'm going to use quotation marks here because this is only very technically, in a very loose sense, homework set. On Wiley that will be covering these problems. This will be ungraded. I will not check if you did it. And it will be set up to let you check answers. So basically what I mean by this is that I will be setting it up on Wiley so that you can actually take a homework set about integration by substitution, just so you can see and practice these types of problems for yourself. I won't be grading this. I won't even be checking to see if you did it at all. I will set up the system so that it will literally just tell you the answer to these problems if you want to know them. Again, there's no benefit to cheating on this because it's not graded, or really it's completely optional. So there's no point in doing that. The only purpose behind this is so that you can see what the real answer is if you're struggling. And hopefully the system will give you some hints. And also, if you're working on these and you find that you're not entirely certain how to do any of these problems, this is a way for you guys to, first of all, identify that, and second of all, to contact me with specific questions about these problems so that I can help you with those, and hopefully get yourself nice and practiced for all these types of problems heading into the final exam next week. All right. The only thing remaining for me to say here before sort of closing out for the semester is, well, I guess there's a couple of things. First off, there will be more example problem videos if necessary or requested. So if there's absolutely anything that any of you guys would like me to go over, make a video on, I am more than happy to do so. Please just let me know. Even if you want me to do this literally in the middle of the final exam, you're struggling on a problem, you're like, I don't know how to do this, just get in touch. I will record a video going over how to do these types of problems for you in the middle of the exam. I don't really care. I just want you to be able to solve the problems correctly. If you need a video from me showcasing how to do that, I obviously won't do the exact problem on the exam, but I'll be more than happy to go over a problem that is similar to that and to show you all the steps. So please, please, please get in touch with me if there's anything you'd like me to cover from that perspective. Second thing is that the final will work similarly to the take-home. That you all just did. So that was basically one of my main reasons for assigning you guys the take-home the way that I did, is that I figured it would at least, well, first of all, it would serve as your second exam grade for this course. But more importantly, I figure it's has served as a dry run for what you guys can expect on the final exam. The final exam will obviously be a little bit longer. It will cover more topics, but it will be similar. It will be take home. I'll be asking you guys to submit it in the same way. You will have even longer to do the final exam than you will have, or than you had to do the take-home exam. But all the rules are going to be the same. You can contact me at any time. It will be open book, open internet, yada yada. Okay. And aside from this, one of the last things I'd like to say is if you still have not submitted your take home, please do so. I'm aware that obviously the deadline has passed, but as I mentioned in a previous announcement, you will just get docked some points based on the number of days that it is late. The amount of points you will be docked is significant, but it is much, much, much better than getting a 0 on this exam, which is what I'll have to do if you do not submit your exam to me. Please submit your take-home exam so I can give you guys at least some credit for this exam if you have not done so. Most of you guys have submitted already, and if you did, you are good to go. But I just wanted to put this out here just to reiterate this. For any of you guys who haven't sent that in, please go ahead and do so as soon as you can. Do it for you. I don't want to have to give you guys a 0 on that. Okay, so there's one last thing that I wanted to mention, since I did get a question about this, is obviously because exam number 2 was cut out from this course, and because we weren't able to do the weekly quizzes that we were going to do initially ever since spring break, obviously since we've been doing all this teaching online, those quizzes have not been happening. Grading will change. Will change due to the shakeups, shall we say. And I'll be honest with you guys, I have still not exactly worked out the precise way in which I'm going to get your final grade for this course. I made you guys several promises, such as when there were supposed to be 3 exams, I mentioned that if you score better on the final than on any of the other 3 exams, it would replace your lowest exam grade, and things like that. Of course, we only have 2 exams. All this stuff has changed. But even though I haven't figured everything out yet, I will give you guys one promise. And my promise is that you will not be penalized. Be penalized or otherwise worse off. Due to the grading change. So whatever system I decide on using to replace the originally intended grading system, I wanted to make you guys this promise right now that I will make sure that I settle on something that is not going to be any worse for you than what was laid out originally in the syllabus for this course, and that your grade will not be harmed due to all of the craziness that's going on in the world right now and the impacts that that has had on our class. Okay, while we're on the topic of grading, last thing I should remember or remind you of, reminder to you all that there is a pass-fail policy. In place for all courses. this semester. I don't want to go into the detail about this at the risk of giving you guys misinformation about this, but I do know that you do not have to take any action right now. Basically, based on the course that you get in this class, you will be able to request that your grade for the class this semester be replaced on your transcript with a grade on the pass-fail scale. You should have received an email and information about this from the university itself. If you have not done so, for whatever reason, let me know, and I will try to get you in touch and get you the information that you need to about that. But I just want to remind you guys that this exists. I know that many of you guys may want to make use of this either for this class or for any other course that you're taking this semester. So I just want to remind you guys that's a thing that's there to help you guys. This is, I think, a pretty big deal. So don't forget about this as the semester ends. That's pretty much it for what I have for you guys as far as lecturing this semester. I know it's been sort of weird doing everything by video. I'm sure that some of your other classes did things by video conferencing instead, and I honestly don't know which would have worked better, but I think this system worked out all right. It was a joy having you guys in class this semester, and a bit of a shame that we had to sort of do the second half the way that we did, but I wish you guys all the best. I wish you guys good luck on the final. Once again, don't be afraid to get in touch with me if you need any sort of assistance. And otherwise, I hope you guys are all staying safe and staying healthy. And that'll be it for the semester.